Around 1200 BCE, every major civilization in the Eastern Mediterranean collapsed within a single generation. The Hittite Empire, which had dominated modern Turkey and northern Syria for centuries, was completely destroyed. The Mycenaean kingdoms of Greece, builders of the great palaces at Mycenae, Tiryns, and Pylos, fell into ruin. The Egyptian New Kingdom, the most powerful state in the world, barely survived and never recovered its former strength. The great trading cities of Ugarit and Alalak were burned to the ground and never rebuilt. The Kassite dynasty in Babylon was overthrown. Cyprus was devastated. The entire interconnected system of Bronze Age civilization, a network of trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange that had flourished for centuries, came apart in roughly 50 years. This is the Bronze Age collapse, and it is one of the greatest unsolved catastrophes in human history. What makes it so difficult to explain is that no single cause fits all the evidence. The usual suspects, invasion, drought, earthquake, internal rebellion, all played some role, but none of them individually accounts for the simultaneous failure of every major power across thousands of kilometers. The collapse was systemic, which means the answer is not who did it, but why the system was fragile enough for everything to fail at once. The late Bronze Age world was extraordinarily connected. Royal letters found at Amarna in Egypt and Ugarit in Syria reveal a web of diplomacy between the great kings, who addressed each other as brother and exchanged gifts of gold, lapis lazuli, chariots, and skilled craftsmen. Trade routes carried tin from Afghanistan and copper from Cyprus to fuel the bronze industry that powered every army and economy. Grain shipments moved between Egypt and the Hittite territories. Merchant fleets connected Crete, the Levant, and the Nile Delta. For its time, it was a globalized economy, and that connectivity was its vulnerability. The archaeological record shows a cascade of failures. Earthquake damage appears at multiple sites around 1225 BCE, though the Eastern Mediterranean has always been seismically active. Pollen cores and climate data indicate a prolonged drought across the region beginning around 1200 BCE, which would have devastated agricultural production. Letters from Ugarit in its final years desperately request grain shipments, complaining that famine threatens the city. The Hittite Empire, dependent on grain imports from Egypt, was especially exposed. Then there are the raiders. Egyptian temple inscriptions at Medinet Habu describe massive attacks by groups the pharaoh called the Sea Peoples, a confederation of maritime raiders whose origins are still debated. The inscriptions depict both land and sea battles, with the Sea Peoples shown traveling with ox carts carrying women and children, suggesting they were not just raiders, but displaced populations seeking new territory. Some scholars identify them with Sardinians, Sicilians, and groups from Western Anatolia, people who may themselves have been refugees from the collapsing northern kingdoms. But the Sea Peoples were likely a symptom rather than a cause. The destructions they are blamed for follow a pattern that suggests they were moving through an already fractured landscape, attacking weakened cities rather than toppling strong ones. Ugarit was destroyed around 1185 BCE, and the final letters found in the ruins show a city that had already sent its fleet and army away to help the Hittites, leaving itself defenseless. The historian Eric Klein has argued that the Bronze Age collapse is best understood as a systems failure. When every economy depends on every other economy, a disruption anywhere becomes a disruption everywhere. Drought reduces grain, which weakens armies, which emboldens raiders, which disrupts trade, which collapses the economies that fund the armies that maintain order. Each failing piece accelerates the failure of the next. The system was not destroyed by any one blow. It was destroyed by its own interconnectedness. The collapse ushered in what historians call a dark age, lasting roughly 300 years. Writing systems were lost, trade networks vanished, populations dropped sharply, cities were abandoned or reduced to villages. When civilization re-emerged in the region, it looked completely different. The Greek alphabet replaced Linear B, iron replaced bronze, small city-states replaced vast empires. The world that came after had almost no continuity with the world that came before. There is an uncomfortable resonance in this story for anyone living in a globally interconnected civilization. The late Bronze Age powers believed their system was permanent. Their diplomatic archives, their trade networks, their military alliances all projected confidence and stability. Within a generation, nearly all of it was gone. The Bronze Age collapse is a reminder that complex systems do not decline gradually. They hold together until they do not, and then they come apart faster than anyone thought possible.